mid-July to the end of August, I kiss my wife goodbye, and she knows that it's coming, and she's like, yeah, I know you're going to be gone every day. If you're not doing workshops, I'm going to be out probably anyway.
So it's literally every day. Like you go to work, you get up in the morning, you look at the weather, and if there's any potential whatsoever, you're like, yep, later today, I'm going to be heading out, no matter what.
Yeah, that's a little bit like it is. Can you believe I'm still married?
Well, hey everyone. Welcome to episode 421 of F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen. I'm your host, Matt Payne, and this week we're diving deep into the electrifying world of storm photography with my guest, Greg McCown. Greg is a phenomenal landscape photographer known for capturing some of the most jaw-dropping desert storms and lightning strikes that you'll ever see. In addition to his photography, he also works in real estate, so we'll talk about how he balances those two worlds. But the real magic of this episode is in Greg's storm photography expertise, how he finds the perfect locations, why he shoots with multiple cameras, and what it takes to safely capture nature's raw power. Plus, he shares some of his wildest storm chasing stories and insights into keeping photography fresh and exciting. Before we jump in, I want to give a huge shout out to our newest Patreon supporters, Sandra Swanson, Dee Noel, Naomi Figueroa, Diane Trankel, Vasilis Mustakas, and Chris Byrne. Your support makes this podcast possible, and I truly appreciate it. If you'd like to join our Patreon community and help to keep this show going strong, head over to patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Every contribution makes a huge difference. Now let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Greg McCown. All right, Greg McCown, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, I'm excited to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and shout out to Suzanne Mathia for making the connection and for making the suggestion to have you come on.
Oh, she's awesome. I mean, she is one of the best. I mean, thank you, Suzanne.
I feel like the Arizona photography community is much tighter than what I've seen in other parts of the country. I'm just curious if there's a reason for that.
You know, it is, and I don't know why, but yeah, we kind of look out for our own. It's a good community. We even have little meetups every once in a while. There's a couple of them that really try to get together and get the group together, and kind of a little bit old school.
Yeah, is that thing. Bob Miller? Is he the one kind of trying to organize all that?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, no, last I didn't really get in with that group until just a couple of years ago. He invited me out, and then last year I finally was able to meet up with those guys up in Phoenix, and it was a blast. I mean, a lot of really just fun people, and to finally meet, putting a name to a face, because in this industry we're always, social media first, and you kind of get to know someone a little bit here and there. You don't really get to know them in person, sometimes for years. Yeah.
Well, that's what's fun about this podcast is I get to dive a little bit deeper than the surface with some of you all. So this is going to be a lot of fun. So for Greg, for people who don't know about you and your photography, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about who Greg McCown is?
Okay. I'm an Arizona native. Grew up right here in Tucson. I'm 51 years old. I'm married, and I've got 5 kids.
Wow, okay.
Now, 3 of them are already out of the house. I got 3 grandkids. So family is doing well, and I have a very patient wife who puts up with all the crap we like to do. Running off for a weekend and going shooting storms sometimes 2 years ago I was gone for an entire month, and she was still here when I got back. So, a lot of women would not put up with that. No way. So she's awesome. And she supports me in this.
Yeah. And what is it that you do on top of your photography?
So I'm a real estate agent by day. I've been doing that for, 29 years now. It's great business, and it allows me the flexibility to kind of work in some photography and have a hobby. And not only that, I can justify all the lenses and the drone and all the other stuff by, hey, I also need it for real estate,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that makes sense. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I'm sure there's a lot of synergy between those two kind of professions, if you will.
there is, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, so like you said, in addition to being an awesome landscape photographer, you're welcome. You work in real estate. How do you split your time between the two activities?
That's a balancing act, especially when it comes to storm season. That's when I do workshops, is May and a little bit into June, and then July and August get crazy. So sometimes it is a challenge because I need to be in two places at once. Fortunately, nowadays, it's amazing what I'm able to accomplish on the road. I can write offers. The only thing I can't really do is show properties. And so for that, I have a partner that I'll bring in. They'll kind of cover for me while I'm gone, and it works really well. It's just, if you have someone that's there to see houses right now, I kind of have to turn it all over to my partner and let them run with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that makes me, I have to ask, because I've noticed that this is a pretty common thing in the landscape photography community, where you have people like yourself who appear to be having a very successful career doing whatever, real estate or medical supply sales or whatever their career is, like they're a doctor or a lawyer, like they're doing really well. And then on top of that, you decide that you want to commercialize your photography by teaching workshops. So why add all that extra pressure on yourself when you could just, theoretically, it seems like, just take the time for yourself and do it for just the love of it?
Because that exact aspect of teaching is so much fun.
Okay.
It is. I really, really enjoy getting out there with people and showing them how to do it, and how to read the weather, what settings on the camera, all that stuff I've had so much fun working with people in that realm. And so yeah.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, if you super enjoy it, like, why not?
Yeah. There are times where, I want to get out there alone. I want to get away from everything. And I do. But the workshop part of it is just, it's fun. It's a blast. And sometimes you get those repeat customers. You will always have certain customers that, maybe this workshop wasn't for you. It's a little too much, a little too strenuous, or, they're not happy. But that doesn't happen very often. Mm-hmm. It's so rare. And if we have to, address some issues there, then so be it. But it's very rare that happens. Most of the time, these people that come out on these workshops are there to have a good time. They're there to learn something and to get a shot. And most of the time, we deliver something amazing.
Yeah.
It's never what you expect it'll be, which that's the storm world. It's unlike the other landscape photographers where, hey, if you're going out and doing a workshop, you know what time you're going to be somewhere, what you're going to be shooting. You've probably scouted out the foregrounds and everything else. It's kind of all set. Storm photography workshops are not that way.
No.
You are flying by the seat of your pants, and sometimes you get absolutely nothing. And some days you have it where you don't think you're going to get much, and you're kind of preparing everybody, and the thing just goes nuts, and you have the greatest show on earth. And those are the nights that I live for. It's just so much fun. And to experience that with someone else, be it a friend, a family member, or a workshop guest, now turned friend, because you've now shared this experience that's just amazing. It's just awesome.
And how long have you been doing the storm workshops?
Storm workshops, let me see. I started off, I was doing just kind of some, small group ones, 3 people, up until about, I think it was about 8 years. David Swindler, a good friend of mine at Action Photo Tours, he came into town. It was one of those situations where I just kind of, through social media, I kind of got to know him, and I said, hey, if you're ever down in Tucson, look me up. I'll take you storm chasing. And sure enough, it was like 2 weeks later. Not really, but you get the idea. He shows up, and we're just, let's go storm chasing. And I think he already had it in his mind to turn it into like a photo tour. And it was in the back of my mind already. And we went out, we had a blast. And the funny thing is that was a down year. It was one of our wet years. So storm structure was good, but the lightning wasn't. But we still had this great time. We got some really good shots. And he's like, dude, we got to turn this into a tour. And for 6 years, I worked with him. I kind of split off on my own along with my good friend John Serlin just a couple years ago. And nothing against David whatsoever. We split on completely great terms. I mean, and I would work with him again. He is fantastic. So
nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, well let's talk about storms. Let's talk about storm photography because
that's my favorite subject. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's something I've always really wanted to do myself. In fact, I want to say a year and a half ago, I bought a lightning trigger. I'm like, I'm gonna pay attention to the weather. I'm gonna go out and shoot storms, and like I just haven't done it yet because like the time period for me when it would happen, just it's never lined up correctly with my schedule. But why have you focused so much of your time capturing storms? What's the allure for you?
I think part of it is the difficulty. It's only there for a split second and it's gone forever. Yeah. I mean, if I go to the Grand Canyon, if I go to Sedona, if I go to one of these iconic locations, I'm going to see the same thing that everyone else has seen. I'm going to capture my variation. Yes, I will put my own twist on it. We always try to do that, right?
Sure.
But it's still the same thing. And with storms, it's not, because now that moment is gone. Whatever happened with that storm is gone. You might see something similar. That often happens, but it'll never be exactly the same. And there's something so fragile about that, something so spontaneous, and just that in that moment to capture that lightning strike, that tornado, that supercell structure, that that amazing moment. And it's hard. I mean, you're taking all of the landscape photography elements, which are hard enough already, and then you're adding another extremely difficult element to it.
Right.
And it just drives me. I mean, you go out with the hope that you're going to get something good, but there's always a chance you get absolutely nothing. You get skunked. The storms don't do it. I mean, no matter how good you are of a forecaster, there are still days where nothing works out. I end up spending my whole time driving around, picking my nose. I mean, I'm out there. I turn it into a scouting trip, which, where I'm starting to look for new locations to shoot from. I try to use the time, but that's all it is. It feels like a waste of time. And so many times you have those days where I just wasted 6 hours catching nothing. I didn't even pull the camera out, But then there's other times where you go out and you get kind of what you expect or what you hope for. But then there's moments where you go out and you capture the most epic storm in a great location, and everything just works, and it just goes and goes, and you're just like, I've got a year's supply of photos to work with from this one shoot. And had I not gone out, how... fear of missing out, big time. Yeah, no, it when someone else is on a storm and I'm not there, I'm like, no, I'm happy for them because it's usually a friend of mine. The storm chasing community is very tight, especially here in Arizona. You talked about the photo community being tight. You should see the storm photo community. I mean, it is super tight.
Right.
A bunch of weirdos in there, a bunch of good people, it's just like high school, just kind of in reverse, because now the geeks, the ones that know the weather and all that other stuff the best, they're the king. So it's high school flipped on its head. But it is just awesome. And you're so excited when someone learns something new. I mean, I've got, especially here in Tucson, I've got so many people that I took out on workshops or that I showed something to that are now succeeding, and they're learning the weather. They're learning the photography aspect. I mean, some of them have come from knowing nothing, and to see them succeed and do well and be in the right place at the right time, which is everything in storm photography, being at that out in front of the storm or off to the side where you can see it and it actually goes nuts right at sunset or right after. No, it's so much fun to watch them. I'm very proud of my students. I mean,
that's cool.
To see them succeed is just awesome.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that you didn't like come into the world storm photographer, and I'm guessing that like a lot of photographers, there was kind of like an epiphany or a pivotal moment that happened in your photography journey that caused you to go, this is my jam, this is what I want to focus my efforts on. Do you remember what that moment was for you?
2008, it was a moment of frustration for me, to be quite honest.
As it often is, yes.
Yes. No, that moment was a moment of frustration because, I mean, I'm standing out there. Back then, this was 2008, I don't know anyone that was teaching storm photography workshops. Nobody. I mean, they didn't exist. And anyone that did storm photography wasn't really willing to share. Bunch of jerks, just kept keeping it to themselves. So I had to learn it all on my own. And so I was standing out there in the weather, with my camera, holding it up, going, watching the lightning strike, going click, click. You're not getting anything with that. Your reflexes, you learn really quickly. Your reflexes are not fast enough to catch lightning. No, it just doesn't happen. And if you happen to get lucky enough to just press the button while it's flat, you're extremely lucky. Go to Vegas. But it was in that time, I finally captured one, and all of a sudden, some of the lights started clicking. Okay, well, now I need to start shooting a little bit later when it's a little bit darker. I can do longer exposures. I can, do 8 seconds. I can do 10 seconds and just shoot continuous. Lightning triggers started coming out around that time. They sucked, but they were at least something to work with during the day. And then it was kind of this just keep practicing. If I see a brick wall, I'll go hit my head on it a few times and try and work my way through it until I finally break through. I'm a little bit too independent. I should have reached out to more friends and people that knew how to do it rather than trying to punch through it myself. That's always been me.
That resonates with me as well. Like, I love to take the hard road, and then it's like you talk to somebody who figured out it took you 5 years to figure something out. And they're like, oh yeah, I spent like $200 and I watched a couple YouTube videos and I figured it out. I was like, screw you.
yeah, exactly. Why did I kill myself to do it on my own? I'll never learn. I keep doing it, but I eventually got through it and started figuring it out. And I found, I grew up here in Tucson, so the monsoon, out in Colorado, out in the plains, everything else, it's more about the supercells. It's more about the tornadoes. Here, it's all about lightning.
Right.
We are in one of the best, and it's right where I grew up. Right where I grew up is one of the best locations in the world to take pictures of lightning. There are other locations that get more lightning, but their cloud bases are really low. I'm sure you've seen it, especially out in Colorado. You get those low cloud bases. They're great for tornadoes. But low cloud bases are awful for lightning. Because, your lightning's that big, on the screen.
Yeah.
So here in Arizona, because of all the heat and everything else, we have very tall cloud bases, which means that lightning is traveling all the way down. And we also have small storms that just kind of go up and then die. They're not spread out over everywhere. So it gets concentrated into this little mass, and so you can be off to the side or out in front and be able to see it.
One of the things I was really excited to ask you about and talk to you about is kind of maybe some introspection on your part in terms of thinking about how storm photography has been an educational tool for you in terms of not only scouting, but also like finding compositions and figuring out the best way to weave in different elements of the landscape to complement the main subject, which is the lightning. And I'm guessing that was probably a very frustrating and or interesting journey in terms of like figuring out what works and trying not to be too formulaic. So maybe talk a little bit about kind of what that process has looked like for you, and maybe expand upon what it looks like for you now in terms of finding really good compositions to complement the storms.
Yeah. All right. So number one thing I had to learn is a storm, especially like a lightning strike or a tornado, can stand by itself. So I am looking for that first. And then if I can work in a foreground, great. I know that goes in total opposite of everything we teach in workshops outside of storms. But in our storm workshops, we specifically preach, don't worry about the composition so much in the beginning. Don't look for your foreground. Don't focus on that. If it happens to work out, you get a nice little barn in the foreground. You get a saguaro.
Yeah.
Obviously one of my favorites.
Right.
You get something else that works with it, great. But a storm photo, a big lightning strike by itself can stand by itself and be amazing. It doesn't need that foreground. So, and you can't really chase storms based on foregrounds. You have to chase the storm first and hope that a foreground works in. Because otherwise you'll never get anything. Yeah, if I sit there and wait at my saguaro, my barn, my windmill, whatever it is that I want in the foreground, I can't stand there and wait for the storm to come to it. I'll be waiting a very long time. I mean, they don't line up that way. The storms they don't follow instructions very well, They're like my kids,
Right. But with that being said, I'm guessing that, because you had mentioned earlier, like you'll go on trips for 6 hours and get nothing, but you take that time to scout, and I'm guessing, if it was me, I would probably use that time to like, oh, here's an interesting scene that a storm could work with. Here's an interesting scene. So you probably have all of these GPS pins where you're like, okay, the storm's going to be over in that area. I know 15 different like types of scenes that are going to work with that storm. So I'm going to go figure out how to line those. Like, is that kind of what you're thinking? Or?
Yes. So, okay, just to give you an idea, I do that. I'm actually pretty religious about marking potential locations.
Yeah.
Either something with so a whole lot of things have to come into play on those locations. One, I need a wide open view. I need to be able to see, and to be quite honest, I want where, if there's any way I can get it, I want the landing points. I want where lightning is coming down or where a tornado is coming down. I want to be able to see where it connects. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate goal. Do I always get it? No. And can I still have a great shot without that? Yes. But if I can get that landing point, that's my number one goal. So I use Google Maps, and I don't know if this will show too well, but this is just in and around Tucson. Let's see if that'll come into focus. There's all my spots.
Right.
So that's in and around Tucson.
So there's like what, 200 pins right there?
Just around Tucson's probably approaching like 2,000. I wasn't even zoomed in. So there's and I have them all like itemized by. They're all labeled. So which way I can face. Is it raised? Is it good? I have the ones that are my favorites, hearted. These are the ones with like the city light views. These are the ones with a barn, a windmill, I mark those locations, and I do that anywhere I go. And so those are all my storm locations. Then I mark the landscape locations a little bit differently. They just have like a different color to them. So I can't recommend that enough. You know, and I've used other apps and software to try and track locations, and Google Maps just seems like be the best one for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I use Gaia, and for me, Gaia is like it's real easy in the field to like drop a pin. You can change the logo or the icon. You can even attach a photo to it. You can write descriptions. I mean, there's a lot of power in Gaia, and you don't have to have cell connection. Like you can download the offline maps and access it from any time, even in airplane mode. So for me, that works the best.
Gaia.
But yeah,
Gaia is fantastic, especially for landscape. Marking those locations.
Yeah, or just
storms.
Like
I need something that's yeah. Storms. It works perfectly for Google Maps, and since I'm already using that, I just integrated all my Gaia spots because I was using Gaia for a long time. I actually integrated all my Gaia spots just over to Google Maps because I was already using it for the storm locations. Okay. But Gaia was my go-to for my landscape spots. But having two spot markers going at the same time, I finally gave up.
All right, so I've always been super jealous of people who have figured out how to capture so many amazing desert storm photos. Other than scouting and being super meticulous with your research, what's your secret, man?
Number one is getting out there. I'm not going to capture anything on the sitting on the couch watching TV. So number one is getting out there. And you got to get out there a lot. I mean, you are not going to capture something epic the very first time you go. Sometimes it might be 10 times before you start kind of getting the process. So, stubbornness.
Yeah, and I'm guessing weather plays a big factor in terms of like understanding the local weather patterns and like reading weather forecasts and like understanding different variables that are going to create the optimal conditions.
It sure does. No, you have to take on meteorology almost as another hobby. So I'm studying meteorology. I'm watching. So my typical day during monsoon, I have to go to work, but at first thing in the morning, I'm going to spend 5 minutes watching the forecast. And I'm going to be kind of picking it apart. Okay, what could be happening here? Do I have a chance? And then by noon, I'm also looking at it again. I do like Pivotal Weather. Pivotalweather.com is kind of our go-to for all our forecasting and everything else. There's also the Radar Scope is our main app for satellite imagery and being on the storm once we're out there. Another fantastic one is called Sasquatch. So Satellite Sasquatch. That one will give you your imagery from satellite imagery from above. So you're looking down on the storm, which is extremely valuable, especially when we're talking supercells, tornadoes, because then you can start seeing that rotation in the clouds. And actually, it's beautiful. So those are kind of our main apps and our main website that we use. We'll use Pivotal Weather out in the field as well, trying to predict what's happening next. And it's all about moisture, instability, and lift. Those are our three ingredients to a good storm. And if we can get those and in the right amounts, now we're talking. Something's going to happen.
Yeah, so let's go a little geekier. What are the variables? Those three variables. What are you looking for the kind of right ingredient list?
Actually, there's about 100 things. So the main ones, though, moisture's pretty easy.
Yeah, humidity is basically.
We're looking at dew point. Dew point's a little bit. That's just the ground level, though. So we want to look at the whole column of atmosphere to see how much moisture we have there. There's other things we kind of look at there. Then instability, primarily we're looking at CAPE, convective allowable potential energy. And yeah, we're kind of going a little bit geeky. I don't want to take you too down this rabbit hole. I mean, people get doctorate degrees on this stuff. So
totally.
And you can go a deep dive into it in no time at all. CAPE is a very good factor for instability. It's how fast things can move in the atmosphere. So those are kind of two of the primary ones, but then there's a whole slew of items that you kind of have to watch for. And it's...
So if someone doesn't necessarily want to get too in the weeds, but they want to give themselves a relatively decent chance of capturing something, given that they understand the technical aspects of image capture, does it just make sense to like get on like Windy or weather.gov or whatever and just like look for storm potential in a given area?
Actually, no. I would avoid those ones. I would go with go to pivotalweather.com.
Okay.
And just play with the models. Start there. The models are fantastic. They're not perfect, and you want to look for times that the models kind of align with each other. So if we've got the HRRR and maybe a couple of the other ones kind of lining up and saying the same type of thing, like a storm is going to be over here in this town at this time, if they're kind of in sync with each other, that's a really good sign. So we watch those models to see what they think is going to happen, because they're basing all their information on all those little details, those 100 different items. They're kind of a computer generating this, what they think will happen based on that. So skip everything that I said before and just go straight to the models and just pay attention to those.
Got it.
But you want to get to know those. Pivotalweather.com is probably my favorite just because it works well both on your computer at home and it works decently well on your cell phone when you're out in the field. There's 100 different websites you could go that kind of have the same information, but that one's kind of my favorite, my go-to.
What is like the time period for monsoon for you? Is that like May, June, July? Is that kind of the...
So about mid-July is when it starts really ramping up, and it'll go to the end of August. So mid-July to the end of August, I kiss my wife goodbye, and she knows that it's coming, and she's like, yeah, I know you're going to be gone every day. If you're not doing workshops, I'm going to be out probably anyway.
So it's literally every day. Like you go to work, you get up in the morning, you look at the weather, and if there's any potential whatsoever, you're like, yep, later today, I'm going to be heading out, no matter what.
Yeah, that's a little bit like it is. Can you believe I'm still married?
No, that's cool,
it's a
man.
good woman right there.
It's really awesome to have a passion like that. And, you know, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but like in so many of these scenarios with folks like you and me, like having a supportive spouse is critical.
Oh, I couldn't do it without her. I mean, most women would have just said, I'm not putting up with this. No way. So, and
you lucked out, bro.
Yeah, I did. I really did. Though she's awesome. So
I just want to take a quick pause and tell you about the tripod that I trust for my landscape photography, the FLM CP30 L4 II. You know, finding the perfect tripod is like finding the perfect pair of boots. It needs to be sturdy, reliable, and lightweight enough to carry all day without regret. That's why I use the FLM CP30 L4 II. This tripod strikes the perfect balance of height, weight, stability, simplicity, and price. It's rock solid in the field, yet compact enough for long hikes. And here's the kicker. It's half the price of tripods from Really Right Stuff, while matching them in every critical way. So, if you're tired of overpaying for a tripod and want something built for serious landscape photographers, check out FLM. I trust mine in the harshest of conditions, and I think you will too. Find out more by visiting the link in our show notes or by visiting flmusa.com. Okay, let's get back to this week's episode. All right, cool. Well, let's talk more about the technicals. So like we've been talking about, you have so many amazing lightning photographs. And you talked a little bit about staying out a little bit later, like blue hour, probably taking those longer exposures, 10, 15 seconds. In addition to that long exposure technique, are you using lightning triggers at all, or are there other techniques? Okay, why don't you talk about what trigger you're using and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So let me start out by saying what I don't use. I don't use the really heavy-duty neutral density filters.
Right.
3-4 stop is kind of the max. After that, what happens is the ambient light becomes too much, and it fades out. It kills your lightning. And that's what you're there to shoot. So, right. People say, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to throw a 10-stop filter on, and I can shoot 10 seconds in broad day." It doesn't work because what happens is you won't even see that lightning strike. It'll be actually, you might have the actual bolt, the main bolt itself, but all the beautiful leaders that you're there to hopefully capture won't even show up.
Right.
So
3-stop max?
Maybe 3-stop max. Most of the time I shoot just with a circular polarizer on it, just because it slows it down just that little bit.
Yeah, like maybe a 1-stop, something like that, I think.
Yeah, so that's kind of perfect. So 1 to 3 stops. Then throw on a lightning trigger. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It's going to miss. It's going to misfire. A car's going to drive by. The reflection's going to make it go off. Big deal. It's a digital file. We're not shooting film. So people get all bent out of shape that their trigger's not working, and I spend half my day, on workshops trying to get people's triggers to work the best they possibly can, but they're limited. They are very limited. So I am excited about these new cameras coming out that kind of, what is that called? Reverse capture? Not reverse capture.
Oh, like the A9 III has it.
Yes.
And I think that Sony A1 II also has it, where it's I can't remember the words.
Pre-capture.
Pre-capture, that's it. Yeah.
There we go. So, yes, I am excited about that. I don't have that camera yet. That's on my to-do list. So,
we'll call it that.
Yeah. But for now, lightning triggers are the best option. Not a great one, but they're the best option for shooting during the day. If someone has a lightning trigger on at night, they have no idea what they're doing. Don't listen to them. There is no reason to ever have a lightning trigger on your camera once you can hit 2 4-second exposures.
Okay.
As soon as you can hit, as soon as it starts getting kind of dark out and blue hour time, get that trigger off there as fast as you can and just shoot continuous. Yeah, will you end up with 1,000 shots, but just delete them. I mean, it's digital files. Again, we're not shooting film.
Yeah, so you're talking, you throw on an intervalometer and you're just saying, okay, take a 4-second exposure with no delay in between and just keep going.
Exactly.
Got
yes.
it.
And as it gets darker, makes minor adjustments. You're up to 10 seconds. I don't like shooting longer than about 10 seconds, 15 at the absolute max, because then all of a sudden the clouds start getting blurry.
Yes, right.
And I want that structure in there.
Yeah.
So another little tidbit.
This is the lightning trigger that I picked up. It's the Stepping Stone products. Is that a good one?
That's the best one that's out there right now.
Okay, good.
He's kind of a pain to get stuff from him. He's a one-man outfit, but
I want to say it took like 2 months or something. It was like, I'll send it to you when I get around to it. It's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah, and he's really proud of his little cords that break a lot. So yeah, he charges an arm and a leg for those. I do have a friend that is developing a lightning trigger right now that I'm very excited about. Okay. One, it'll be a better build quality, it'll be smaller, and it'll work as well, if not better than that one. So I was gonna say I don't know how far development out
it's not terribly large, right? I mean, it's not.
Yeah, but that thing is fragile, and there's some design.
Fragile, yes.
Yeah, that little button on top is way too easy to turn on. That thing will eat 9-volt batteries like you wouldn't believe.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
There's a couple design things that I'm like, I think we can do better than this. So someone's gonna come along and blow him out of the water if he doesn't start making some changes. Sorry,
Well, it seems like it's a pretty niche product. I mean, but
It is. And that is the best one on the market right now. It
Okay.
is.
good.
So-
Well, I'm glad I did a little bit of research and I picked the right one.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the other things that I thought was really interesting about your approach to storm photography, which I'm guessing is maybe not that unusual, but it's unusual for people like me who typically have maybe 1 or 2 cameras on them. You've got like a billion cameras. So talk about how many cameras you're using when you're photographing storms.
If it's if it's windy out, I'm shooting with 4 cameras. So on a windy day where I can, and I have I custom built a mount that I can attach 4 cameras to 1 tripod.
Okay.
So it's this little a square aluminum tube bar, and I just built it, spread it out, and I can attach it to one. And you want, so for storm photography, you want big, beefy tripods. You want the ones that
chunky.
yes, and tall, because
Yeah.
you want to see over the bushes and things like that. So once you mount 4 cameras on it with this bar going across, it becomes very heavy. If it's not windy out, I'll shoot with 8 to 9 cameras. So anytime you're out on a storm, there's other storms forming and dying, and there's storms at different distances. I want to be able to shoot at multiple focal lengths all at the same time. I'm just trying to maximize my time out there.
Sure.
And if I can shoot the storm to the north, the south, and the east, all 3 different storms all at the same time, heck yeah, I'm going to do it.
5 different focal lengths.
Exactly. No, just last year, one of my favorite shots from last year, I had, I think I had 6 cameras on it, and there was only one that really captured it the way I wanted to capture it, and that was zoomed in, and that's where you're kind of going for the money shot, where you zoom in real tight, where you're just trying to fill the frame with nothing but lightning and
you're just
the ground in the sky. Boom.
You're like, please, Lord, strike
Yes,
right there.
just hit right there. No, right there. And so I want to be able to shoot wide, where it's capturing kind of the whole scene. I want to be able to shoot tight, where I'm like 85 millimeters drilled in, 135 millimeters, just in tight, right where I think it might strike. And if it does, now I got the money shot of the day. And by having so many cameras going all at the same time, I'm just increasing my chances. That's
I get it. I'm visualizing, like, if you look top down, like if someone flew a drone over your setup, there's like a ring of tripods around you, and you're standing in the middle with like all of these like cords attached to you, and you're taking, like, I'm just picturing like this complete freak show situation.
Yep. Yeah, that's about it. Now, minus, I don't need the cords because I got everything on lightning triggers, or I just use the built-in intervalometers just because I'm handling so much.
Yeah.
The external intervalometers are better, and if I was just working with 1 or 2 cameras, great. I can't deal with 6 external intervalometers. I mean, I've already got to lug around all these tripods and gear. So between the mounts, so I can do 2. I try not to ever have more than 3 tripods set up, because it's really hard to grab them all, especially when the wind starts picking up, or you're
Like
going
the
to lose
storm
gear.
is like, the storm's coming, and you're like, I gotta get packed up fast.
Yeah, and it takes a while to take it all down. So with my setup, though, I can just grab, that group of 4, boom, that goes in the car, tripod. Group of 4 in the car, tripod, and then probably one other that's just on a tripod by itself.
Okay, so you're like maximum 3 or 4 tripods?
3. I try not to do 4 tripods. 4 tripods, it starts getting a little bit difficult to grab it all and throw it in.
And what?
Let me back up, because
Yeah.
up to 9 cameras. Let me back up a second. When I'm on workshops, I shoot with a maximum of 2 cameras.
Sure.
Yeah, because I'm not focused on me. I'm focused on everybody else. 1 or 2 cameras, I'm fine. And we encourage people to bring 2 cameras on our workshops,
Gotcha.
where they can set up because we're not going on any big hikes. You don't want to be far from the car. So, I mean, you got to be, at the most, we'll go like about 100 feet from the car because we need to pack up and go quickly.
Right.
And we don't want to put people in danger. So.
And which cameras are you using?
Mostly Nikon.
Okay.
I do have a little Canon mirrorless that I just play around with. That way I get to know, keep in touch with Canon's menus. Sony's menus. Sony's are great cameras, but their menu system sucks. And the fact that they have 3 different ones.
It's gotten better.
Yes, they have. Thank goodness. Because for the longest time, it's like every time I bring up a Sony, I'm like, oh no.
Like, where's that again? Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, which version of the menu is that? Yeah,
I
come on.
program everything I need to my FN menu or to the various menus, and like I just make sure all my cameras are identical, and that way it's muscle memory after a certain point. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah. No, on Nikon, I can find anything, anywhere on any Nikon camera in the middle of the dark, easy. Canon, I'm pretty close. Sony, depends on which menu system. It makes it a little bit more difficult. But
so are you shooting mirrorless cameras, or are these all DSLRs?
I've got 4 mirrorless cameras. That's 3 Nikon mirrorless. The Canon is a mirrorless, and then I've got 5 DSLRs.
Like D850s or something?
D750s and D850s. D850s are still... I'm sorry, D850 is still a beast of a camera. This many years later,
it's a great camera.
It really is. It's just a monster, and when you throw on a big lens, you're just like, oh, don't have to work out for a week. So
yeah. So and then what lenses are you? I mean, we don't usually talk about gear on this show, but I mean, it seems like it's pretty crucial for your workflow. Which lenses are you using for your setup?
Any and all. So I carry anything from 1400 to. Well, usually I have a 600 in my car too, but up to 300 is where we're normally shooting for storms. I don't like going up to 300 though. Up to 200s most of the time. Anytime I can shoot a prime lens though, I will. Okay. I love my 50s, the 85s, the 135s. I got way too much.
I totally get it because it also simplifies the composition process, and it's it's a better image. I mean, it's sharper. That also brings me to ask you another question that I didn't want to forget to ask you. And that was, are you shooting manual? Are you auto ISO? Because, if you're setting up at the end of blue hour to do long exposures, I'm guessing if you have 9 cameras, it's not super practical to, constantly be changing settings. So, what's your setting mode preference?
Okay, so that completely changes from day to night. During the day, you're, smaller aperture, you're just trying to slow it down and get as long of exposure as you can. If you can get to 1/20th of a second, you're doing good. Anything slower than that's fantastic. Now, once we get to sunset, you're kind of, if you're shooting towards the sun, it really affects it. If you're not, then it's not too bad because then it starts getting a little bit darker. I will usually shoot in aperture priority mode, especially with that many cameras. You just can't. You can't be running around in manual mode, messing with things. Plus you're gonna miss everything.
Right.
So we set it up in aperture priority mode. If it's kind of blue hour, I'm probably shooting aperture priority f11, ISO as low as it can possibly go. Try and get that up to the 4-second mark where I can pull the trigger off. It's nice once it gets dark enough that I don't have to keep changing my settings.
Yes.
And so then you're at probably 10 seconds f8 ISO 200 to 400. I don't use auto ISO, and
it makes sense. I mean, it's not a super dynamic situation. I mean, you're not changing the composition at all, so it makes total sense.
Yep. Once we do get to it being dark enough, you have to go into manual mode on your camera. You cannot be shooting aperture priority anymore because what the camera is metering and what you're getting are 2 different things.
Right.
Because the lightning hasn't shown up yet, and that's going to change the exposure a little bit. So
yeah, I would feel like it would completely overexpose any lightning photo.
Oh, it'd be, it just wouldn't work. So we set it at manual mode 10 to 15 seconds, f8, ISO 200 to 400, and it depends on how far away from the storm we are. If that storm is super close, you start lowering that aperture. You got to make adjustments. If it's super far, maybe I'm shooting at a 6.3 ISO 800 and
Yeah, you got plenty of depth of field.
10, 15 seconds. Yep.
Especially if your closest subject is not, it's like 200 yards out or something. Like, doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. That all makes total sense. All right. Tell us about the craziest storm photography session that you can remember. Like, what was the situation?
Craziest. Closest I've ever gotten struck was Grand Canyon.
That qualifies.
Yeah, that one was scary. Let's go with that one. That one's recent. That was just this last summer, Grand Canyon, and we were up there, shooting storms, and you're up on the rim. And that storm was across the canyon, and we were getting some great shots. I mean, in the canyon shots, that's iconic. It is one of the top goals of every storm chaser out there is to get lightning in the Grand Canyon.
Right, totally.
So we're up there and we're shooting away, and it drops a pretty big one somewhat close. And I started thinking, I looked at my friend John, who was with me. I looked over at him, I'm like, that was a little bit close. And we're on the rim. This is the south rim. It's not, and I think we were at Moran Point.
Yeah.
And there was another guy there, a friend of a friend, that was shooting next to me. He said, "Yeah, I almost got struck by lightning over here just the other day." And sure enough, it happens again. Lightning strikes, and there's probably 80 people all watching this. I mean, just a few photographers, but 80 people out on it. I've never seen a parking lot clear that fast. I mean, everybody was running for their cars. And I was wearing a hat because I'm bald and I don't,
Yeah, you don't want to get sunburned. I get it.
Yeah, I don't want to get sunburned. And that little metal thing on the top.
Yes.
And everybody felt like a little bit of a tinge right there. That little bit of, you're not getting struck by lightning, but maybe kind of like a little bit of a leader kind of started forming there. And because I could identify right there, that was the spot where I kind of felt it kind of charged. But it was fun to watch people run for their cars. And anytime the storm chasers are running for their cars, you better be running too.
Yeah, I remember when I was, I think I was 7 years old, maybe 8. I was on top of a high 13er with my dad, and we had gotten up there. We were hiking with a close friend of his, and my dad and I got up there first, and we were just below the summit eating lunch. And there was like a storm kind of coming, and our friend comes up, and he's like, "Can you guys not hear that sound?" And we're like, "What are you talking about?" And we stand up. And there was like a metal pole on top of this mountain, and it was just vibrating. It was like, and I was like, oh my God. And I was wearing a hat just like you were talking about, like a trucker hat, and that little metal ball was like vibrating. It was like, I was like, and my dad was like, "We gotta go." And so we just like ran down this mountain as fast as we can. And I mean, I was 7, and I still remember every single moment of that. So yeah, it sticks with you. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, being out exposed on top of a mountain in the middle of a storm is not the place you want to be.
No, that's a good way to die right there.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, I have a couple more questions for you. This one's a little bit less storm focused, but how do you keep photography fresh and interesting? Because I guess, with storms, like your main subject is always kind of similar, like awesome lightning and stuff like that. So how do you keep it invigorating for you to keep going out and doing it?
That's a hard one because sometimes it kind of hits you and you're kind of like, maybe I'll just do something else. It does, you get those lulls. Now, during the storm season, I have no problem because it's just go, go, go. There's a new, storm coming on. So July and August, May, for the plains, I don't have any problem keeping up with those. During the rest of the year, though, I'm shooting other stuff. I'm shooting stars, I'm shooting landscapes. I just got back, ran up to White Pocket and the Page area, did a couple slot canyons with my daughter and son-in-law. So you got to keep trying new things, trying to see new places. Always keeps it fresh. And doing it with other people really makes a difference. I mean, would I have been motivated to just go by myself up there? Probably not. But because my daughter and my son-in-law wanted to go, now all of a sudden it's kind of like, okay, now we're experiencing it together. It makes all the difference. I mean, almost all my favorite memories are tied to a good friend or a friends or family members. I mean, that same daughter, see, she's 24 now, married, living on her own, just off. When she was 11 years old, I took her on her very first storm chase. And I'll never forget, it's one of my favorite memories because we got some epic lightning shots. I mean, silhouetted swirl right in the foreground, big old bolt crashing down, leaders all over the place. And that night, I sent it into the local news. All three, NBC, ABC, CBS, all three local news stations put her picture up on the news at 10 p.m. with her name across it.
Nice.
I mean, can you believe in an ecstatic little 11-year-old girl? I mean, she was just geeking out. Just couldn't believe it. And I've sold that picture. I have to pay her every so often because that same picture has been on the book covers. It's been in magazines. It's been in calendars. I've sold it many times. And I call it Jessica's Luck because that was her first. And you want to know the crazy thing? I got the same shot with my camera, but I accidentally kicked my tripod, which made it blurry. So I got the same shot, but mine sucked, and hers is perfect. No, it was great. So I have all these memories of family members. All my kids have gone with me. My son, when he was 14, got to experience his very first tornado.
Oh, wow.
Right before he starts high school, he's out with me storm chasing tornadoes, and we got this gorgeous elephant trunk tornado, just absolutely beautiful. On a LP, it's a low precipitation supercell, which means there's not a lot of rain to get in the way, so you can just see everything.
Oh, right.
And absolutely gorgeous. And here he is, 14 years old, out photographing a tornado. And I told him beforehand.
Not a lot of 14-year-olds can say that.
Right. I told him beforehand. I told him as he's going to high school. I said, okay, high school and events like this, it's all about the stories you have. Don't be afraid to share them. And I looked at him and I said, you've got the best story of anybody in your high school right now. You just went storm chasing, caught a tornado. You have pictures of it that you could show to them. I mean, what better story is there? I wish I would have had a story like that when I was going to high school.
Totally.
I mean, that would have been awesome.
And I think that's one of the things I love about photography is its power to form memories and connections with other humans, and it's like a glue of sorts in terms of giving you the ability to recall what that memory was like and who you spent that time with. So I think photography has a lot of power in that regard.
Yeah. There's another one that always stands out to me. Have you interviewed a guy by the name of Sean Parker yet?
Yeah.
Okay. Sean is a good friend of mine. And this was kind of earlier on when I was kind of getting more and more into storm chasing. Didn't feel like I was quite, as well versed on the meteorology part of it. And so Sean and I were both from Tucson, and we got a lot of friends up in the Phoenix area. And so we actually planned to meet up with those guys kind of halfway in between and chase with them. Just kind of on the side. We left and we're like, well, we could just hang out with those guys. I mean, they really know what they're doing. I won't say who it was. We got up there, and for some reason we just decided, they were going one direction. We just decided, you know what? I kind of like this other direction better. And so we headed up towards Florence instead of following the other guys. And we got up to Florence, and when we were up there, we could see a dust storm starting to form. You could see it kind of curling and kind of kicking up, and more wind, and we're like, you know what? Let's follow this. Now, dust storms are a little bit different animal. You kind of just run away from it. Just try to stay in front of it, get out in front, and it is dust storms are the worst.
Yeah.
It's the most uncomfortable you will ever be because it's dusty. You're out in front of the storm, so it's like 105, 110 degrees, and you're just sweaty, and the dust is hitting you, and you're just the car is a mess. Anyway, so we followed this dust storm from Florence. It started forming and kind of getting better. We kept getting better shots. And so we get out in front of it, turn around, shoot it. Get out in front of it, turn around, shoot it. Well, one of the times we got out in front of it and we were getting to the point, we crossed I-10, so we're south of Phoenix, got over to almost to the town of Maricopa, kind of a little town in the middle of the reservation out there, and there was this big wash. And this massive wash, we looked over and we saw a bunch of cows coming down it, and all of a sudden we realized those aren't cows, those are wild horses coming down the side of the wash. So here we are, it's almost sunset time, so we're getting that gorgeous sunset golden light in front of us. The dust storm is hitting from behind, so it's creating this ethereal, dusty, western look to it, and there's wild horses walking through the scene. I mean, we're just like,
amazing.
Hit the brakes, we're like, get out the telephoto lenses, and we spent the next 20 minutes getting just pounded by sand, because we're just getting obliterated from behind, but we're just kind of tucked in here, just kind of shooting all these wild horses, babies. There must have been 80 of them, all walking, and they're like struggling through it was so cool. It's one of those moments that you're just like, I could do this every day for the rest of my life, and so much fun. And I will always have that memory with Sean. I mean, had I been alone, it would not have been the same.
Right. Totally.
It would have been cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I have this all to myself? Yeah, that's a little bit selfish. Sharing it with Sean was just awesome. And then we posted those pictures to the social media stuff later that day, and all those Phoenix guys were kicking themselves. We're just like, we're not competitive at all.
No, not at all. All right, Greg. One more question for you. What do you hope to do with your photography? What are your goals in terms of, what is your why?
That's a hard one because, it feels like I've done a lot of the why. I've gotten out there. We do workshops. We're having fun. Honestly, it's hard. And
sometimes that's enough, right? I feel like this is one of those things where sometimes in this industry people overthink things a little bit. And if fun is all it's about, that's fine, Yeah.
It's nice that I make a little money doing it because now I can justify to my wife, hey, I'm making money while I'm doing it. I need to go. This is scheduled. Trying to think if there's any specific thing, and really it's just kind of continue. Get better, continue to get better. Continue to do more workshops. And continue teaching it. It's almost getting to the point where I'm almost kind of like passing it to the next groups, the next people that are going to do something more. There's a lady here in town. Her name's Donna, and she just had this. She came on my workshop a few years ago, and she's like, "Oh, I love your stuff. I follow you. I do this, all this stuff." And she'd shot some, and she's a good photographer. But this year, for some reason, she was on every good storm. Just boom, 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 just killing it. And she got some epic shots. And to watch her succeed and do this has just been awesome. And I can kind of sit back and...
Very rewarding.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's my next step, is just letting others take over those moments, and I'll still try to get mine, obviously, but a lot of it is that, and my kids too. My kids have kind of, my 14-year-old loves going with me doing storm chasing. We've had a couple moments where we've had to tuck in the back of my little SUV with the, when the storm gets really close, you got to get in your car, and we throw up the back hatch, and you just kind of climb in the car so you're a little bit more safe. Not the safest, but it's much more safe than being outside, where I can just reach out and grab the camera and then roll back in. And we just had a blast. sitting there with my 14-year-old son shooting lightning.
Yeah,
it's fun.
What's better than that?
Yeah, so I can pass it along to my kids. My daughter's actually already taken over. My daughter does weddings and all that stuff. All the stuff that I don't want to shoot. I don't like shooting people. But yeah, she does all that, and she's a very good photographer.
I love it when non-photographers hear us talk. They're like, why are you shooting people? Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I mean photographing people. Sorry.
Yes. It just comes out natural. Shoot them.
It does. Yeah. All right, Greg. Tell us about your photo tours. How can people learn more about doing these storm tours?
Our website is stormphototours.com, though.
That's memorable. That's easy enough.
Yeah, easy. And myself and my partner is John Serlin. He is a meteorology genius. Just call him the Storm Whisperer. I mean, the guy he has been storm chasing since he was 14 years old.
Wow.
And has seen over 1,000 tornadoes. Guy is just amazing. He's kind of my mentor on the meteorology side of things. And so we're about the same age. I got him by like a year or two. So we just have a blast together. And it's so much fun going out. We both enjoy teaching. We both have a love for storms and the photography side, obviously.
We'll make sure we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And then wrapping things up, who do you recommend for the podcast? You just mentioned John Serlin, but who are some other people that we need to know more about?
John Serlin, Sean Parker, but I think you already interviewed him. And then another really good one is Jeff Maltzman. He is fantastic. Danilo Faria. He's a go-getter. You would like him. He's a little bit like you. Just go, any mountain. He just wants to go up it. I consider myself a pretty good hiker until I'm standing next to him. I just have the hardest time keeping up. I mean, the guy is just a beast on the trail, and he's such a nice guy. Really knows his stuff, has some great shots. So he's fantastic as well. So.
And who is the woman local to you? You said her name was Donna. What's her last name?
Donna Ruthruff.
Okay.
She's great. And I got to do a shout out to Lori Bailey. She is a go-getter on storms as well. I mean, absolutely diehard. If there's a storm out there, she's going to be on it.
Man, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us. And I feel at least a little bit more prepared to chase a storm if it ever is something I can pull off with my schedule. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, come on down to Tucson. I'll take you out.
Let's
get you on a storm.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's do it.
Cool.
Hey, you have a good one. Thanks for having me on, Matt. Really a pleasure. Your show is awesome. I mean, you've really filled a niche here. I mean, this is what podcasting should be, you know.
I appreciate that. Thanks for joining me for another great episode. A huge thank you to Greg McCown for sharing his passion for storm photography and some incredible insights into capturing nature's raw power. His knowledge of lightning photography, location scouting, and shooting with multiple cameras is truly next level, and I hope you found this conversation as inspiring as I did. Before we wrap up, I want to remind you that F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen is supported by listeners like you through the Value for Value model. If this podcast brings you inspiration, education, or just good entertainment each week, I'd love for you to consider giving some value back. You can do that by joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/fstopandlisten. Every contribution helps to keep the show going strong, and I truly appreciate your support. Also, I know a lot of photographers have been reaching out about tripods lately, so if you have any questions or need recommendations, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to help. Thanks for stopping in, collaborating with us, and listening. See you next week.